Alrighty, welcome to today's practice. We are going to work through some wrist strengthening and mobility improving exercises. I'm just going to preface this whole thing with,
it's a little bit boring.
You're just going to have to deal with it because you know what else is boring? Not being able to do yoga or push-ups or gymnastics or push open a door because you have some wrist dysfunctions. So let's keep them healthy. We're gonna get started with this. You're gonna sit on a block or something comfortable, so you could sit on a chair if you wanted to as well. The main thing is that you're not distracted by other parts of your body. We wanna be just focusing on, obviously, the wrists. We're gonna start this particular practice with some wrist cars. So take hold of your wrist, of your forearm, the radius and ulnar bones, because we wanna keep them still. And what we want to do is start to bring our hand into kind of a flexed position, or not flexed, but active, so it's actually extended, but we want it to be active. You're going to grab hold and you're going to start to move into flexion. Now, as you move into flexion, notice like how much can you go into flexion before you start to curl your hands around or move your elbows so that you can get more. We want to avoid this. So we want to, it's called controlled articular rotations. We want to see how much range we really have in flexion and extension without needing to try to contract other areas, just the joint that we're trying to work on. So let's move into that. So try to avoid letting the fingers curl in. We're going to take it into flexion, then we're going to start to take it all the way around into extension and then around again. So let's move through this. Now my wrists are terrible because I have neglected them and I have put them under a lot of duress because of my love for gymnastics, martial arts, yoga, and these have put my wrists under loads that they weren't able to handle. So this is the stuff that I avoid too, and it's really important to maintain it. So we're kind of just doing it together. So we start to move through this and we really try to keep everything else still and connected to the body. So just pay attention to where your range is at today. Hopefully you're coming back to this video a few times so that, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to get used to me just talking. You probably mute me if you've done this a few times. And you want to just see how your flexion and extension and this rotation is improving. Good, release, and we'll change sides. Grab hold. Your controlled articular rotations move through flexion, over to the side, move into extension, and over to the other side. Your controlled articular rotations are not really going to improve mobility per se. What they are going to do is make you aware of where you might have mobility limitations. The other thing that they're going to do is help to build proprioceptive awareness in that joint. So sometimes it's not a question of mobility, but it's actually a question of not having a very good neural connection to that joint, not having good coordination, good proprioception. So as we move through this, we're also developing the coordination to be able to articulate this joint as it should be able to articulate. And that's really, really important. Okay, so make sure you're moving in both directions. Okay, holding those ulnar and radius bones very still, keeping the fingers still as well. Oof. Okay, shake it out, release. We're gonna move into the next one. So what we're gonna move into is some flexion, wrist flexion. So moving that block out of the way, come into an all fours position. And what we want to do is come into a position where we tuck our hands slightly. Now I have an injury on this wrist from Muay Thai. So if that's you and you have some kind of issue, you want to obviously back out of it if it's too intense. Now the main thing we're making sure that we don't have is closing angle joint pain. So if we have some kind of closing angle joint pain whereby we're experiencing pain, this is the closing angle. So if we're experiencing pain at the front here, we want to avoid that. If that's the case, you need to back out of it, maybe avoid it altogether, maybe get some soft tissue work done by a trusted professional to try to alleviate that, or if there's another contraindication that's more serious, obviously have that diagnosed. Now, from this position, we're just coming into a passive stretch here. Okay, so passive flexion, you should feel sort of maybe a stretch of the forearm. On this side, I certainly feel it a lot more than on the other side. My range is very different. Now you can imagine what kind of impact that's going to have when I do various exercises like push-ups and I have a mobility discrepancy between the left and right side. Now, we all have slight discrepancies, and that's okay. We're not necessarily supposed to be symmetrical beings, but over time, that can be exacerbated and can become a little maladaptive. So, just holding this stretch, we're just gonna sit here and hang out. And we're gonna breathe. Okay, and then what we're going to move into is our PAILs and RAILs. So, from here, what I want you to try to do is push into the floor as though you were trying to open up your hands like that. Okay, so push your hands into the floor as much as possible. So you'll start to feel the muscle activate more around the front there, the muscle that we're stretching. So really try to push into the floor for another 5, 4, 3, ramp it up a little bit more, 2, 1, good, relax. And now we're gonna take a regressive angle. So what I'm trying to do now is move into the regressive angle. I'm trying to flex my wrist even more. So from here, I'm gonna really try to bring the palm of my hands up to touch my elbows. Okay, it's not gonna happen, but we're trying. For another 5, 4, don't let your fingers do it. 3, 2, 1. Relax. See if you've got any extra range. Can you start to shift your hips back a little bit more? If not, maintain or back out of it altogether if you're getting any kind of discomfort in the front, in that closing angle area. Beautiful. Now you could repeat this a few times to increase that range. But for the sake of this video, we're going to release. And we're going to move into some extension. Let's just allow this to relax a little bit. We come onto the fingertips for a second, and we're going to work through some strengthening. So come up onto the fingertips like so, and then come down into the hands. Up onto the fingertips, then down onto the hands. Fingertips, hands. Fingertips, hands. Really gently, but also in an active manner, strengthening the forearms. Hold your high finger position, and then from there, if you can, start to move into maybe taking the knees a little bit further back. Yeah? Maybe starting to work through finger push-ups on the knees. Chest coming to the floor, and then coming back up. This is a beautiful strengthening exercise that I do in gymnastics that, you know, we had to do as a part of a warm-up program. Okay, release, shake it out as needed, and then we're gonna move into extension, extension. All right, so if you have a ganglion cyst, which I do have starting to develop here, I'm not going to do this particular wrist because I have closing angle joint pain here. Now there are certain things that you can do. You can do some banded distractions to help pull the joint apart a little bit more to create space. But when it comes to closing angle joint pain, I always have a bit more respect for it, and I just prefer to go and speak to a specialist about it now because I know that I have an injury here. I'm gonna back off that one, but we are gonna do this one together, just for the sake of this video. I wouldn't ever recommend, I mean, again, body is not symmetrical. Let's come into this position first and then I'll explain. So you're coming into wrist extension. So the fingers turn towards you. We keep the arms straight and we start to pull our body back a little. And I'm pushing my heel, the heel of my hand into the floor here. Not aggressively, but I'm just starting to get a bit of a stretch here, right? For my wrist. Breathing deeply, calmly, you feel that tissue start to stretch. Now, when it comes to this injury is a bit funky. It flares up right before my menstrual cycle, right before I menstruate, and then it completely goes away. And I have absolutely no problems in my wrist whatsoever. So there's an inflammatory response going on in that area that I just have to respect over time. And speaking to my physio, Andrew Wild, he very much encourages this notion of sometimes you have to accept the cost of the sports that you love. And things that I love to do, martial arts, you know, striking, but also grappling, but also handstands, but also yoga. They require a lot of demand on the wrist, and I spent all of my childhood, my young teens, doing gymnastics, which was also a lot of pressure on my wrists. So there's always going to be that. That might be the same for you, maybe not. Either way, you have to respect it. So now we're going to move into our PAILs, progressive angular isometric loading, which means I am going to push my hand into the floor as though I wanted to do this action with my wrist. So let's go, pushing my fingertips, the palm of my hand for another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good. Now I'm going to try and lift my fingers up towards my forearm. So I'm going into deeper extension. 3, I'm trying to lift my palm off. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Really peel your fingers off. 9, 10. Good. Exhale. Maybe see if you've got any extra range. Maybe not. Maybe you're going to hold steady, but just move into the passive stretch. Good. We're slowly going to release. You'll feel the tissue all the way up through into the biceps as well, which can be really intense. But it's a good thing, right? Because we end up with better range through the front of our arms. We have to remember that it's all connected through fascia and through tissue. Okay, shaking out the hands, moving through the fingertips. Beautiful. There's your sequence for today. By no means is that an exhaustive list of wrist work that you can do. There's obviously much more forearm work that needs to be done, which we did a little bit with the finger push-ups and those finger strengthening exercises that help to protect the wrist. But I will do another video that works on forearm strength as well and helps to build into that. But this is a really good place to start if you want to increase and improve that range of motion in your wrists. I'll see you on the mat soon.